grandpa stole his first buggy in 1892. I met your grandma pig slopping in 46.
Oh, every Christmas we'd visit my Uncle Fred in prison.
And welcome, Genies, to a special 4th of July Classic Rewind edition of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And this particular episode was recorded back in early 2016. And I'm excited to share it with you over this 4th of July weekend because it features a two-part interview with one of my favorite characters of all time on television. Samuel Roukin played that character, Colonel John Graves Simcoe, on the TV series Turn, Washington Spies, and it was originally on AMC. But now you can catch not only the third season, which we talked about in this particular episode, but you can catch all the seasons and the entire story arc covering the beginning of the revolution all the way to the end on Netflix. So hope you enjoy the show and have a great 4th of July weekend.
Do you have an interest in the American Revolution? Do you have ancestors who fought against or maybe on behalf of the king? Well, this week, Season 3 of AMC's Turn, Washington Spies, about the Culper spy ring, begins. And I've identified 5 ancestors who were actively involved in the revolution in the Northeast, and 13 on my wife's side, all from the South, mostly Virginia. Well, the guy who plays the very warped, the very evil Captain John Graves Simcoe, an actor named Sam Roukin, is going to join us in the show later today. And we're going to talk to him for 2 segments about what he's learned about the history of the revolution, the character he plays, who is an actual person. In fact, he became the lieutenant governor of a province in Canada and freed slaves in 1791. So I'm very excited for you to meet Sam Roukin, who plays John Graves Simcoe on Turn a little bit later on in the show. And then, of course, Tom Perry's going to tell you about video editing and a video editing program that you can use for your old home movies and videos. It's cheap, like free, and you'll be able to do things at home that only Hollywood people could do just a few years ago. That's later in the show. Well, as you know, David Allen Lambert, the chief genealogist for the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org, usually joins us on the show. He's in London these days. We've had him on via Skype the last couple of weeks. Well, this week, he went to an area where we found out the Wi-Fi was just a little bit weak, and so it just isn't going to happen today, so I'm going to have to carry the whole thing myself. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if David Lambert wasn't aware of this. There's a rug designer over in England in Wiltshire named Luke Irwin, and he and his family wanted to convert a barn on their new property that they had just bought, and they wanted to convert it into a ping pong room. So they brought in the electricians to do this underground cable and put the barn in lights. Well, when the workmen began drilling into the ground, they hit this layer of mosaic tile. Yeah, intricate red, white, and blue. Well, this guy, Irwin, he knew the significance of this. He said that no one, since the Romans, had laid mosaics in Britain to use as house floors. So they were able to actually put an end to the work from the workmen before they actually started busting it up. Irwin called in archaeologists, and they ran tests, and they found that this mosaic went back from sometime between 175 and 220 A.D., and it was remodeled over several times since, but they've determined it's a Roman villa courtyard. So there's an actual artist rendition now to see what this thing looked like 1,800 years ago. It's from Smithsonian Magazine. You can see the link at ExtremeGenes.com. Well, here's a story that's been making a lot of news this week. Georgetown University was founded centuries ago by Jesuit Catholic priests. Well, it turns out in 1838, the university, which was then a college, got into some financial problems. Well, they owned slaves, a lot of them, over 230 of them. And they decided the only way they were going to get out of debt was to sell the slaves to the market in New Orleans. And this is all very well documented and found within the archives of what is currently Georgetown University. Well, the story's beginning to gain a lot more traction as people have come to understand who these people were. There were families, there were babies, women, men, old, young. The ship's manifest, as they were sent off to New Orleans, really tell a story of great hardship. There's one account from a Jesuit priest associated with the school who didn't approve of all this, as saying that one woman was actually on the dock begging and wondering and asking what she had done to deserve this. Well, the university obtained a lot of money as the result and wound up paying off their debts. Today, Georgetown University still exists because of the money they raised by selling their slaves down to New Orleans. Now, the Catholic overseers of the school in Rome at the time disapproved of this move. It was made contrary to their orders, and so now an effort is underway to identify the descendants of these 230-some-odd slaves that were sold by Georgetown University, and try to determine if there's some way to make reparations for what was done to their people. And next week, we're going to talk to one of those descendants about this experience. She happens to be the president of a genealogical society in Washington. It's going to be fascinating to hear what she has to say about her viewpoint on this incredible story from the 19th century. You can read about it in the New York Times and find the link at extremegenes.com. Well, good news from AmericanAncestors.org and the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Their long-running published quarterly, the New England Historical and Genealogical Register, with over 400 million searchable names, is now complete and in digital format in their databases. So you can log in now with your NEHGS membership or guest account and check out all this incredible information that's waiting for you now. And just a reminder, all of our shows are now entirely searchable, yet we transcribe them. So if you want to remember some of the things we talk about or find something further about it once you've heard it, just go to extremegenes.com, go to our podcast section, and search the transcripts. And coming up next, we're going to talk to the man who plays the very evil Captain John Graves Simcoe on the AMC series Turn, Washington Spies. The series is coming back for their third season, starting Monday night at 10 o'clock Eastern. Sam Roukin joins the show coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com.
At Legacy Tree Genealogists, we provide families like yours with the stories of your ancestors, a legacy that will be cherished for generations to come. Legacy Tree Genealogists provides genealogy research for clients worldwide, helping them discover their roots and personal history through records, narratives, and DNA analysis. And when your research requires access to on-site archives in the countries your ancestors lived, Legacy Tree Genealogists has researchers in more than 100 countries around the globe who know the local language and how to get their hands on the records you need. Legacy Tree Genealogists is the recommended research firm of genealogy industry leaders worldwide, including MyHeritage, 23andMe, and more. Check out what our clients have to say. Absolutely the best. They communicated through the entire process, and my report arrived on time. The story of my family with supporting documents was very fulfilling. Tom G. Google review. Don't wait any longer. Request your free quote today at legacytree.com. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries.
Anytime is a great time to learn more about your family. Did you miss Roots Tech Connect this year? It's not too late to experience Roots Tech classes, keynotes, and how-to content. Just visit rootstech.org to see what you missed and to experience Roots Tech Connect on your own timetable. Select inspiring and insightful messages that will help you in your pursuit to connect with and share your family story in new ways. You can then use the free resources found at FamilySearch.org or the Family Search Family Tree app to have a deeper personal experience getting to know your family, past and present. Connecting with family and learning about your ancestors provides healing, peace, and a sense of belonging. And it's easy to share what you learn with others to help and inspire them as well. Visit rootstech.org for some inspiration or visit FamilySearch.org to continue on your journey of family discovery today. All right, Genies, the masks are off, libraries and archives are opening up, and in part because of the pandemic, there are more records online than ever before. That means more opportunities for you to discover your ancestors and piece together their stories. Hey, it's Fisher, and if you haven't joined the official Extreme Genes Facebook group, Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies, there's never been a better time. Here's your chance to visit online with like-minded genies. This is the place for exchanging ideas on new sources, databases, DNA, and, well, strategies. Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies got a whole bunch of genies through the pandemic and will only be better now that things are opening up. It's a great online community that gets better still when you become a part of it. Remember, sometimes it only takes one tip or idea to get your family research where you want it to go. Since it costs you nothing to sign up, why not join us? Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. Hey, happy 4th of July weekend, Genies. This is a classic rewind edition of Extreme Genes, talking to Sam Roukin of what is now the Netflix series, Turn Washington Spies.
My name is Captain John Graves Simcoe, and I'm your new commander, by orders of Major John Andre.
And that is the voice of Sam Roukin. He plays Captain John Graves Simcoe on the AMC revolutionary series Turn Washington Spies, the Culper Spy Ring. Hi, it is Fisher, and you're with Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. And if you have followed our program for any time at all, you know that I'm a huge fan of this program. And for some time now, I've been working to get one of my favorite characters from the show on this show. And Sam is on the line with us right now. How are you, Sam? Welcome to Extreme Genes.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I'm just absolutely astonished by your character. And has it changed your life a little bit? I'm sure you get an awful lot of comments because, let's face it, as you portray John Graves Simcoe, he's bloodthirsty, he's twisted, he's ruthless, he has enemies on both sides, he's fiercely loyal to the king, but he also needs love.
Yeah, he's a complicated guy. It's had a huge effect in my life. You know, it really put me on the map here. And, it's such a divisive character that, people have a really strong opinion about him. But on the whole, people are very nice. Usually the comment is that they just love to hate me. So I'm all right with that.
Well, hey, as an actor, as long as they love you for anything, that's not a bad thing. And you were in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows as well. You were a snatcher in that. So obviously they have a tendency to bring you in for some, shall we say, dark characters.
Yeah, I'm going to start taking this personally. I don't know what the problem is. At the end of the day, from my perspective, as long as the characters have some depth and richness to them, then I get excited about it. And as far as it goes with the more nasty characters, generally they are a little bit more complex and usually get written in that way. And so I'm cool with it, really. I enjoy digging into these guys' psyches, and obviously I'm developing a bit of a knack for doing it, apparently.
Well, and in speaking to you, I'm sure a lot of listeners who are familiar with the show are noticing the same thing that I am, that you don't speak like your character. You're from a different part of England, obviously, than Simcoe is. How do you work those accent differences?
Well, all of that stuff is so important, like the costume and the hair and everything else. It's the first thing we see, and when he speaks, it's the first thing we hear. So, I take those things really seriously because I think they really, they're a window into who the guy actually is, or, whoever you're playing is. And so, obviously, basics are, where's this guy from? Where do we locate him in the world? And that's one part of it. And then, obviously, like my voice naturally is in a much deeper register than his, and that really just came from some discussions with Craig Silverstein, the showrunner, and when we originally did the pilot, Rupert Wyatt, who directed it. We were talking about the kind of guy that this is, and I wanted him. I thought it'd be kind of obvious to have this kind of brute, which it could have easily come out as. They were obviously writing a villain in this character, and it would have been very easy to sort of just make him like a typically like nasty piece of work. And I didn't want to be typical with him because I thought there was something a little more interesting in there. And so really it became about wanting him to have a bit kind of a delicate touch. And the question I asked myself was, what would happen if this guy was really nice to everybody. And so that it becomes about, and that came out, and then it just sort of came out in the way, he had a lightness of touch in the way he spoke, and I thought, it's going to be much more impactful if this guy is nasty because of the things he does, rather than your initial impression of him, and that's sort of how it started developing, and then it just sort of took it on in a life of its own.
Well, let me ask you about this. One of the things I noticed in one of the early episodes is your overpronunciation of names. You talked about Talmadge and Brewster. Where did that come from?
The good one is Woodhull.
Yes.
Well, he has a love for language. John Simcoe. I mean, a lot of this as well. It's not just me having fun with it. There is there's some substance to it. So John Graves Simcoe was a poet, and in fact has the first recorded Valentine's poem that we know about. And I was interested in his love for language. It wasn't something I actually consciously did. It just started happening, and then I realized that I wasn't saying these names the same as everybody else, and then it just kind of stuck. So, but I read Woodhull. I didn't read Woodhull or something. I was just saying what I saw really as a character, and that's how it came out. But but it does give him like an individuality that I hadn't really planned for, but obviously contributes to the whole thing, So, good observation.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it when it came. Talmadge. I thought it was great.
Talmadge is a good one as well, yeah.
Yes.
Everyone else says Talmadge.
Well, now
I have to tell you, I really just was saying what I saw. I guess I was inside the guy, and that's how it came out.
Well, now that's the question. This show is about family history, and of course, people who listen to it are also into history. And my fascination with the program is the representation of how my ancestors may have lived under British occupation at that time.
Yeah.
And so there's a tremendous realism. I mean, you see the tavern wench emptying the chamber pot right outside the door of the place, and then going in and serving food. You think, wow.
Yeah. Yes, there was no health and safety department in Torgate. Isn't that the great thing about it, though? About all lots of really great historical television and film that's come out is that the reason why we care is because we realize, apart from having knowing what our heritage is and knowing how we came to be now and what came before us, it's also that they were just like us. It's
yes.
It's a mind trick that we put the people in the past as almost like a different species. And I think one of the beautiful things about portraying it in drama is that we have the opportunity to humanize history. And I think that's a really key element to why we're interested in it, And when those human moments come out, it's really satisfying, I think.
Well, I think you've really hit it on the head. The fascinating thing is watching the challenges. I mean, we've always thought of, in this country, of course, the patriots are the good guys, and you guys are the bad guys. And we're seeing Abe Woodhull changing now. He's becoming very much as bloodthirsty as anybody else in this series. The evolution as he has to go through to fight to survive.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think it's really an indication of how war is a unique experience now and then, and has a very unique effect on the people involved in it. And I think the optics in war are very different, and I think it has to change you, doesn't it? If you're being occupied, if you feel you have to, if you're compelled to do something about that, and I think people do things during wartime that they would never have imagined doing in another environment. So, yeah, it's a really good observation, and I think particularly in someone like Abe, who was just a normal, regular farmer doing his thing and getting on with his life, is suddenly put into this extraordinary situation, and we see him change before our eyes. I mean, I think that's a very compelling thing. But, equally, I think all the characters go through that. Even someone like Washington or, Benedict Arnold or, any of these guys who, John Andre, everybody really could change. And that's one of the great things about season 3 of Turn, I think, is that, we're really seeing the effect of the war on these people and how it's changing them. and changing the way they go about their lives. It's fascinating.
We're talking to Sam Roukin. He plays Captain John Graves Simcoe on the AMC Revolutionary Series Turn, Washington Spies. And Sam, I actually have an ancestor who is buried in the same churchyard with Caleb Brewster in Fairfield, Connecticut. Have you had the chance to go to some of these places that you're portraying? Have you been to Setauket yet?
I haven't been to Setauket, no. I did actually. I lived in New Jersey for a while. Everywhere I would go, I would see plaques and I started to become, a plaque hunter. And where we shoot the show in Virginia, there's also some really key revolutionary sites around here as well. And in fact, we keep coming across places where, Simcoe and his troops were stationed at one point because they moved around so much, particularly the Rangers. But just by accident, in fact, I've come across a lot of places. So, but yeah, I do try and go to as many sites that are relevant as I can. And, I recently went to Washington's headquarters in New Jersey and where one of his camps was. And it's just kind of cool. It's cool to kind of be standing where they stood. Yeah, so I have been to some. I actually haven't been to Setauket, but I do. Funnily enough, we do have fans who are in Setauket, and we often get messages from those guys. I think they're really happy that their town is being celebrated.
Well, it was the whole story was fascinating. In fact, I read a book about this, and then a week later, I learned that your show was coming on, and I just couldn't wait, and it was very exciting. Hey, we're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to talk more with Sam Roukin, Captain John Graves Simcoe from the AMC Revolutionary Series Turn, Washington Spies. We're going to talk about some of the real people, Sam, and how those folks have affected your character and some of the other characters you work with. All right?
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And you're listening to a classic rewind of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, originally recorded in April of 2016. And it should be noted that Turn, Washington Spies, originally on AMC, can now be seen in its entirety. All the seasons, the entire story arc is available right now on Netflix. So check it out. We'll be back with more with Sam Roukin coming up in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hey, you're listening to a special 4th of July edition classic rewind of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. It's Fisher here, and this is my 2016 interview with Sam Roukin from Turn, Washington Spies, originally on AMC, and now can be seen on Netflix. Sam, I've got to tell you right now, my wife is totally creeped out by your character. And she says, why do you have to talk to the bad guy? Why can't I said, well, because I think they're more interesting, because you try to figure out just what is it that makes these people tick. And I'm sure as an actor, you have to kind of think that way yourself, don't you?
I do. Your wife's a very smart lady. No, I'm fascinated by human beings. I think most actors are, and that's one of the reasons why we're compelled to do it. We're very curious about the way people think and why people do what they do and the way that they do them. And so it turns out that when you are dealing with, for example, sociopaths, we're not like that in our normal lives, thankfully. So to make that journey and to go on that voyage of discovery it's kind of a really joyous thing for an actor. So we're as compelled to access the brains of these people as the audience is, hopefully, to watch them.
Well, and so that brings us to the question, how much of the real John Graves Simcoe, who went on to become, lieutenant governor up in Canada, he was the guy who signed off on the first anti-slavery bill in 1791. Right. I mean, he did a lot of really good things. Do you feel any obligation to him as you portray him?
Yeah, I think so. It touches on what we talked about in the first segment when we were discussing this, which is during wartime, I think people are changed, and I think they act in a way that they might not otherwise. And so for me, first of all, the only evidence we have of what the man was like, his own memoirs, which necessarily are favorable towards himself.
Right.
And what he did. and the listed historical events and achievements that he was involved in. We have some, we have his delicate, more literary side to go on, his poetry. And then we have the things he did after the war. So they're facts, We've not met the man and we don't know what he's like. We just know the things he did in his life, which vary massively. And there's no question that the Rangers during the war were a ruthless and very precise operation. Really the way to think of them is they're like the special forces of the army, and they're sent in on very specific stealth missions, and they carried them out really well and with great effect. And so the answer to your question in a more concise way is that people are different during the war to afterwards. Mm-hmm. And for me, I can square away his behavior on the show with what he did afterwards, because I think the more ruthless, more deadly you were during the war, the more you would want to appease that in your life afterwards. And I don't think that we have portrayed, whilst we do portray a guy that is ruthless, does make impulsive, deadly decisions, and that are not necessarily on the moral compass of everybody else in the world, at the same time, there is a soul there, and there is some tenderness. And we see it come out in various different ways. And there are, and I think there is some compassion there too. It's just he's a guy you don't want to cross because it will end very badly. But after the war, I think it's a different world, and I think people adapt, and I think they vary experiences too. And who's to say that you couldn't behave in an egregious manner during the war and then try to do better, try to compensate for that? Even if he wasn't quite as nasty as he comes across sometimes on turn, it's fair to say that he didn't do the things he did during the war after the war. We know that. And so that's really how I personally square it away with what we do on the show,
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And it's interesting, too, because when the show started, I was immediately going to the internet to go, okay, how much is this true? Did this happen? Did that happen? And I found the timelines were different. Abe Woodhull's father was a patriot, not a loyalist. But obviously they were portraying this to show how families were divided. And then I was accepting of that. Yes, this is an historical novel brought to television. And it's interesting to know that John Graves Simcoe actually brought the Queen's Rangers in and beat up Abe's dad to send Abe a message in real life. That's what really happened, because they had received word that Abe was a spy. A completely different scenario, though.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's exactly the point I was making. So, there is enough evidence to suggest that he did a few things that most people would say are egregious. And those are the things we know about. And, I also picked up on just a couple of, a few things. So I've read his memoirs and I've read the diaries about the Rangers and what have you. And a couple of things, there was a pattern that was developing, particularly in the third-person written memoirs of Simcoe, which they would arrive in a place and then they would stay in this house here and this house here.
Right. They'd occupy.
And I was like, well, how did you get that house? Who was in it before you? And what happened to the people that were in it when you arrived? I'm sure you didn't just say, would you mind if we stay in instead of you?
Right.
And so things like that crop up, and I'm like, well, there has to be a story there that's just not being told. And I feel like that gray area of history books is really interesting, and I think allows for a little bit of poetic license. It doesn't necessarily feel too far-fetched, So we never know for sure, do we? Because what gets written down, the truth changes a little bit as soon as it's written down. So, yeah, I think there's some leeway in that.
And it's written by the winners.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So one last thing, because we're running out of time here, Sam, but it's interesting because you cannot be killed. I mean, I've seen you get stabbed. I've seen you get shot. I've seen you get knocked out. You are not allowed to die. But in the pilot of this show, you were killed and then brought back to life. Talk a little about that.
Well, it was extraordinary, really. Yeah. Originally, I auditioned for John Andre's character. And got so far down that road, and obviously J.J. Fields was offered the role and plays it exceptionally well.
Yes, he's fabulous.
I've got so much respect for him. And so I thought, well, okay, that job's not happening. And then they said, we'd love you to do Simcoe. He's kind of just in the pilot, but it's a great part. And so I said yes, obviously. And then we did it. And, he dies. He got shot. And as it came out in the wash, Caleb kicks him in the face. And then he goes, then they torture him for a bit in their cell. But in the original pilot, he shot him in the face. And that was the end of that. But AMC found the character compelling.
Right.
And I think, he also serves a really important function dramatically on the show. We needed a regular antagonist.
Yes.
And so Simcoe provided that quality, and it was a real compliment to what I brought to the character. I don't think they quite saw it there originally, but I just kind of gave it everything, and you were supposed to be on the show for longer, and then you're not. But this way around is kind of an extraordinary event, which I'm so very grateful for. It's a great ride.
Well, I don't think we'd be in the third season of Turn if you were not in that role. No doubt about it.
Thank you. That's a really nice compliment.
Well, Sam Roukin, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all you put into this character and bringing the revolution to life for those of us who love it. Let me ask you this. You said you lived in New Jersey. You've obviously been here for a little bit. Are you looking for dual citizenship?
Well, my wife is American, so I'm currently a permanent resident. I have a 10-year green card, and I'm very much here. I think I'm just about allowed to become a citizen, and I think I probably will, yes. I mean, I love America. This is my home now, so my family's here, and so who knows? We'll see.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sam Roukin from Turn, Washington Spies on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
All right, Genies, the masks are off, libraries and archives are opening up, and in part because of the pandemic, there are more records online than ever before. That means more opportunities for you to discover your ancestors and piece together their stories. Hey, it's Fisher, and if you haven't joined the official Extreme Genes Facebook group, Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies, there's never been a better time. Here's your chance to visit online with like-minded genies. This is the place for exchanging ideas on new sources, databases, DNA, and, strategies. Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies got a whole bunch of genies through the pandemic and will only be better now that things are opening up. It's a great online community that gets better still when you become a part of it. Remember, sometimes it only takes one tip or idea to get your family research where you want it to go. Since it costs you nothing to sign up, why not join us? Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies.
At Legacy Tree Genealogists, we provide families like yours with the stories of your ancestors, a legacy that will be cherished for generations to come. Legacy Tree Genealogists provides genealogy research for clients worldwide, helping them discover their roots and personal history through records, narratives, and DNA analysis. And when your research requires access to on-site archives in the countries your ancestors lived, Legacy Tree Genealogists has researchers in more than 100 countries around the globe who know the local language and how to get their hands on the records you need. Legacy Tree Genealogists is the recommended research firm of genealogy industry leaders worldwide, including MyHeritage, 23andMe, and more. Check out what our clients have to say. Absolutely the best. They communicated through the entire process, and my report arrived on time. The story of my family with supporting documents was very fulfilling. Tom G. Google review. Don't wait any longer. Request your free quote today at legacytree.com. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries.
Anytime is a great time to learn more about your family. Did you miss Roots Tech Connect this year? It's not too late to experience Roots Tech classes, keynotes, and how-to content. Just visit rootstech.org to see what you missed and to experience Roots Tech Connect on your own timetable. Select inspiring and insightful messages that will help you in your pursuit to connect with and share your family story in new ways. You can then use the free resources found at FamilySearch.org or the Family Search Family Tree app to have a deeper personal experience getting to know your family, past and present. Connecting with family and learning about your ancestors provides healing, peace, and a sense of belonging. And it's easy to share what you learn with others to help and inspire them as well. Visit rootstech.org for some inspiration or visit familysearch.org to continue on your journey of family discovery today. And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is preservation time with my good friend Tom Perry from TMCplace.com, the Preservation Authority. How are you, Tom?
Super duper, thanks.
I was thinking about how over the last several months, we've been talking periodically about a software called Cinematize that you recommend very highly. And it's gone the way of the dinosaurs to some extent. And if you could find it, great, buy it. It's probably on the cheap. But now you've been looking for something to replace that, some new kind of software. And what have you come up with?
Well, we're working with some software that we're actually testing right now in our studio. And so far, it's very, very promising. I don't want to get into a lot about it until we actually get some of the bugs out of the way. But next week, we'll be able to probably have some good information about it. We've been using it so far. It's been flawless. But there's a couple other things I want to check. I want to check internet compatibility that will make it so you can share it with friends. It's easy to use. And if this software works out like we think it is, it's almost going to be the mother lode of software. It's very inexpensive. It's under $50.
Wow.
There's some certain software requirements. And if you have anything older than Snow Leopard, it won't work with it. But it is amazing software. In fact, it'll actually let you deal with MP3s, MP4s outside of the Apple format.
Wait, you are taunting us here. You're telling us all the great things it does, and you're not going to tell us the name for another week or so?
Nope, it's like the cliffhanger. At least it'll be this season. You don't have to wait till the start of next season.
All right, can you tell us about another one you may have found that would be of use, that you can tell us right now?
Absolutely. This is a great software. It's called DaVinci Resolve 12, just like the famous
that guy.
Inventor, him.
Right.
And this is awesome software. I followed these guys from when they had DaVinci #1.
Wow.
And it's great. It's got editing capabilities. It's got color correction that's just absolutely incredible. And the neat thing about this is they have a version right now that you can download for free. No charge.
Hello.
Oh, it's great. It's just really amazing. So people that want to kind of delve into color correction, this is a good option to go and get because you can play around with it. It's non-destructible.
And are we talking about moving pictures or are we talking about stills? Or both?
This is all movie. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is movie type stuff. In fact, they use this software in Hollywood for your big blockbusters like Avatar and shows like that. So it's an incredible software. This software is so smart. People think, oh, yeah, this is a high-end software. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I don't shoot in 4K. Well, what's neat about this software, you can set it up for different formats. Whether you're using standard definition from your old VHS tapes, whether you have one of those really cool 4K cameras, just about anything that you have, you can use it on this.
Wow. So this is exciting stuff.
Oh, it is. It's great. You can do stuff. You can sync stuff. So if you have some old movies that somebody shot in the old days, sometimes you're shooting your 8mm camera and you have a side recorder. It's not recording the sound on the tape, and they get out of sync. People that do music videos, whether they're for the family or whatever, that's one of the biggest problems. And this has some sync capabilities that's absolutely incredible. In the days when I used to do music videos, you had to do everything vocally.
Right.
And you couldn't see the vocal part. You can see the picture, and trying to line them up was really hard.
The audio was a problem.
Exactly. Trying to get them to line up was really, really tough. With this, they've got this way you can put the time code on the clips, then you can put it together. So like if you're using something from an old concert, a wedding, if you have 2 camera interviews and you want to cut from person to person, for instance, say you're interviewing grandma and grandpa, and you want to have a separate camera on each one of them, you can do this. And this DaVinci software will allow you to go in and sync the two together. So you can say, okay, here's grandma talking. I want to use this part. Here's grandpa talking. I want to use this part. I want to dissolve from here to here. So you're not sitting there doing one and then going back and figuring out I need to do this. It makes it really nice.
All right. And this is very good, by the way, for getting younger people involved with your projects if you get a little nervous about working with software like this.
That's what's neat about getting the kids involved with grandma and grandpa. You can do stuff as a family.
All right. What are we going to talk about next, Tom?
Let's talk about some color correction.
All right. Getting to it in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Hey, it is the final segment of our show for this week, Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and we're talking preservation with Tom Perry from tmcplace.com. By the way, if you have questions for Tom, you can always send him an email at asktom@tmcplace.com. And Tom, we were just talking about this great new software that you've discovered that you recommended moments ago, the Da Vinci 12. Very exciting stuff. And another one you're working on. But you were mentioning color correction. And, this is starting to get, I think, above a lot of people's pay scale to think about some of these softwares.
And that is so true. I mean, we can just talk about 5 years ago. What has happened in the last 5 years is incredible. Color correction, in fact, even a year ago, talking to consumers who walk in our door or send us letters or send us stuff from across the country, color correction wasn't even an option for people to do. It was like, no, if you want it color corrected, we need to do it for you. It's not very expensive. However, we need to do it. Now, with this Da Vinci 12 software, the color correction options it has is absolutely incredible. It has a dynamic track. So when you're actually looking at it on your computer terminal, on your monitor, you can actually physically see the sound. It's like 3D.
Wow.
So you can see, this is when, the refrigerator kicks in and I need to cut it off. So you go in and edit it.
Edit that out. Wow.
Exactly. And when you're doing the color correction, it's the same thing. Everything's in 3D. It's non-destructible, so it's not hurting your original files. You're actually making a new copy of it. So it allows you to go in and do VHS tapes, do your film, your movies, just anything that you have. Where in the old days, if you wanted a VHS tape color corrected, you were looking at a lot of money and it wouldn't be worth it.
Now, speaking of home movies, those would have to be digitized first, obviously, before you could use it in this way.
Exactly. Everything has to be digitized, as you mentioned, whether it's your VHS tapes, your Video 8s, your mini DVs, your Super 8, Regular 8, all of these have to be digitized first into, we used to always go to hard drives, but now we're using MP4s a lot because they're convenient. We can get it to the customer faster, whether you're in Dothan, Alabama, or, down the street from us. As soon as we're done with the project, we don't have to go and convert it to DVDs or Blu-rays or AVIs or MOVs. It's really fast and easy to make it as an MP4. And then once it's an MP4, we can drop it in the cloud, whether it's our cloud or Dropbox or Lightjar, whatever cloud you're using, Google Drive, any of those. You can have it instantly, which saves you a couple of days and saves you a trip back to us, and it doesn't matter where you are. And with this color correction, being able to go to the old VHS movies is so totally cool. Because a lot of times when you have your old wedding movies, you might not have the first generation, and they're kind of starting to look really, really bad. Well, up till now, what we had to do is run it through kind of like a proc amp and some different kinds of equipment that basically we could either correct all your stuff to make it lighter and add some certain colors in, or make it darker, whatever your problem was. However, it had to be consistent through the whole tape. So we'd look at the first 5 minutes, set it up, and then run your tape. But now, if you have dark areas, light areas, some places the color's correct, some places the color's not correct, you can go in with this Resolve 12 software, and you can do it frame, by section, whatever you want to do. If you go and get fancy in it, start building certain kind of filters that you can do and say, oh, wow, this looks really cool here, and run it. And then 15 minutes later in the tape, you've got the same problem again, or on another tape, you've already made up those filters. And so you've got kind of these different things in your quiver, and then you just go apply them to whatever you're working on.
You can ask Tom at tmcplace.com. Send him an email, and maybe you'll hear your question answered on the show. Thanks for coming in, Tom.
Good to be here.
Hey, that is our show for this week, a classic rewind dating back to early 2016. And it's fun to listen to some of this stuff from just a few years ago. And by the way, some of the programs that Tom Perry was talking about in these recent segments, they've been upgraded many, many times. So if you're looking to colorize or do some work on your videos, that is the way to go. So check that out. And it was great also to hear this incredible interview once again with Sam Roukin, who gave us a great insight into how he studies these characters as they recreate the story of Washington's Spies with the TV show Turn that can now be seen in its entirety for all 4 seasons with the entire story arc on Netflix. So check that out. Talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.